honor to have him join our discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deepak and Sumit, it's a pleasure to be in this on this webinar with you. We're really looking forward to your inputs and the information that you're going to provide, because it's something very much that we are looking forward to. All this AI and machine learning and data sciences. For us, it's the future. I think for you guys, it's the present. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having us here.
Okay, we have about 20 people and we are live on the Facebook. Shuktij, should we start? It's 5:03.
Yes, sir.
Siobhan,
Yes,
everybody then? Can we begin?
Sir, yes, sir. I think we can begin. I think people might trickle in a few minutes as well, but I think we can go ahead.
Okay, good evening to everybody. On behalf of the Peninsula Foundation, we welcome you all to today's program. And good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to all the audiences wherever they are. Today's topic is a very, very important one, and I think it's animated the world from the time the World Economic Forum initiated the discussion on this in 2016 as Fourth Industrial Revolution. So our topic is Industrial Revolution 4.0, and we call it the transformational paradigm. And we have excellent experts on the subject. We are focusing on artificial intelligence, data science, and of course the relevance when we move on to implementation. And before I come on to introducing the panelists, let me give a little bit of overview. The Peninsula Foundation plans to conduct a series of discussions related to the Industrial Revolution 4.0, and this is the first one. In fact, we had one on telecom technologies a few weeks back, where Shuktij was also present. But this is the first one seriously going on to unraveling discussing the IR 4.0. And we're starting off with the artificial intelligence and data science related issues. We also will be looking at the genome editing on October 8th, for which one of our experts, who's also the inventor of genome editing, will actually be there heading the panel. And that's on October 8th, Professor Chandrasekharan. So let's come to the topic per se. And those of you who read Alvin Toffler's trilogy ending with 3 waves, the third wave, he talks about the world moving into the third era, which is for thousands of years we've lived in the agricultural era. Then we moved into the industrial age era, and we are into the knowledge era. And this was written more than 30 years ago. And while he describes, how things are transforming rapidly, and that was the time when he was, in the age of the initial age of computers, and how things were developing. But the way things are moving at such a breakneck speed and rapid development in the areas of artificial intelligence and robotics, the pace is enormous, and therefore we are well beyond what Alvin Toffler is actually, talking about in his trilogy. Industrial Revolution by itself is now divided into 4 segments, but it's all about moving away from the era of custom-made productions and simple mechanical productions and simple engineering, to when we discover that power and energy can actually be, new sources can be discovered and brought into mechanized productions. And that's how you got into the first, into the phase of Industrial Revolution using steam and water power, and of course fossil power subsequently. And that changed the dimension of the whole process and how the world worked. For example, in the 19th century, before the Industrial Revolution, India and China shared more than 52% of the global, GDP or global manufacturing output. And come the Industrial Revolution, and Britain changed the whole process. In fact, there's a fine study in Harvard which talks about deindustrialization of India. And that's about textiles and Lancashire textiles. We all heard about that. And that was because we were the largest exporter of textiles in the world for nearly 2,000 years. And when the Industrial Revolution brought in new manufacturing techniques, then the British deindustrialized our process of textile expertise and brought in the industrial process. And that is how, we came down by the beginning of 20th century, our share from 24% of the global GDP came down to 1%. So that's one of the stories. But quantitative curves, quantitative cycles of technologies clearly explains how nations that dominate technologies go on to dominate global markets and go on to become great powers or go on to dominate the global international system. And that is very finely explained in, in the way the technologies have been identified as the dominant technologies. So Industrial Revolution 1, 2, 3, and then we are coming into 4 is a process in which the information, last one is the information technologies that actually dominates the third, Industrial Revolution. And it's a continuation, as some would say, but with the way in which, the digital world has, galloped across, the technologies in the artificial intelligence domain, robotics, and in biotechnology and genome editing will transform the way we actually deal with the world, the way we live, and the way we interact with, rest of the world. That particularly will raise some major important questions. What will be the impact of IR 4.0 in the way how nations interact with each other on the international system and on the geopolitics? We are seeing the battle between China and US, which is largely all about technology leadership. And that translates into many other areas of competition, and including the problem that India and China have today at the borders as well. What happens to the impact on education? What happens to how people will develop or need to focus on what kind of skill levels, what kind of skills they need to actually develop? And that will flow from what happens to employment. We were less than 2 billion at the beginning of 20th century, and today we're 8 billion plus. Maybe the world will flatten out from here onwards, the population levels. But then even if we touch 9 billion, and these technologies will take away the traditional jobs, unless people are transformed into looking at and getting employed elsewhere, what would be the impact of these on this area? And then, of course, there are a lot of positives. The pandemic has actually accelerated this technology development because people are forced to, stay indoors. Lockdowns have impacted, has given a fillip to the technology development for people like Deepak, Mittal, and Sumit, Agarwal, to actually look at solutions to be able to exploit the situation that we have now. When this comes out, there's been a positive aspect of pandemic as well, which is showing up on the climate, on the environment, and therefore maybe these solutions could also actually impact greatly on the global warming and the climatology areas. So there are lots of areas in which we actually can look at, and let's look at what our panelists bring on the table with respect to this. We have 3 exceptional panelists with us, and they're all very accomplished professionals and experts on their field. Let me first introduce Mr. Deepak Mittal. He's an accomplished serial entrepreneur and investor with a proven track record in business and IT strategy and making organization artificial intelligence enabled. Currently, Deepak holds the CEO position of NextGen Invent Corporation. He's based in New York, and a leading global professional services company that specializes in data science, technology, operations, and data management services. Deepak was named as the 30 most innovative CEOs to watch out for in 2017. And he was also named the Entrepreneur of the Month by Silicon Review. In his career, Deepak has served as a member of the board of directors of many companies, including Optum and Launch Right Now. He is the chairman of the Healthcare Committee of Columbia Business School Alumni Club of New York and steering committee member of Extraordinary Women at High Places. At this capacity, Deepak was responsible for evaluating new product ideas and devising an appropriate product strategy and structure strategic partnerships with companies such as IBM, Oliver Wyman, and others. He has managed and launched various products in healthcare, insurance, and finance area for such noted companies as JP Morgan, Cardinal Health, Beverly Healthcare, and Fidelity Investments. Deepak has an MBA from Columbia Business School an MS in Industrial and Management Engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, and a BS in Computer Science from Bundelkhand Engineering College. Our second panelist is Mr. Sumit Agarwal. He is a Senior Research Director for Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning with Gartner, USA. Sumit Agarwal is a technologist with a practitioner mindset and extensive experience on solutions, implementations across the data and artificial intelligence technologies. He has a research focus on artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced analytics, and data science. He provides guidance on artificial intelligence topics, including end-to-end solution implementations, architectures, frameworks, responsible AI, skills development, organizational structure, governance, technology strategy, and open source components. Sumit has worked earlier with Accenture, with Siemens and Perot. Some of the companies worked earlier with them. He has a Bachelor of Engineering in Computer Science and Engineering from Birla Institute of Engineering Technology, and an MBA from Wake Forest University, Charlotte. Our third specialist and panelist is our own Dr. Shuktij Singh Raw. He's been there on the last panel discussion as well. And I'm also happy to announce that he is also a senior fellow with the Peninsula Foundation. Shuktij is a business leader with 26 years of experience in telecommunications, aerospace and defense, infrastructure, military service, and manufacturing. He has led organizations and has valuable experience in sales, operations, strategy, services, and customer relationship management. He has worked across India and Asia in leading multinational organizations. His initial background was, he is an Air Force veteran, and therefore he specialized in guided weapons in the Air Force. He's also worked with HAL, IAF, Ericsson, Nokia, ZTE, Bharati Group, and Tata Group at CXO roles. He's currently the Chief of Infrastructure with TataPower Strategic Engineering Division. Shuktij has contributed to disruptive growth in telecom in India and Asia. He has a valuable experience of operating in different social, economic, political, and cultural environments. He has a doctorate in management from IMI Delhi, MBA from MDI, Gurgaon, and BE in electronics from BIT, Jhansi. Let me now hand over to Shuktij. He'll take over and conduct the panel discussion for the rest of the period. Go ahead, Shuktij, all yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Good evening to all our viewers and audience in India, and very good morning to our distinguished panelists and viewers from US and Europe. As Air Marshal Matheswaran has just outlined, Industrial Revolution 4.0 is a very, very interesting, very intriguing, and a very important topic. It covers such a large scale that to cover this in one panel discussion, is not possible. So as Peninsula Foundation has started a series of discussions, this discussion happens to be the first one. This discussion aims to set up the base for further discussions on various dimensions of Industrial Revolution 4.0, the emerging technologies that enable this revolution, as we call it, in the industry. And I'm very, very, delighted and extremely privileged to have very distinguished panelists, Deepak Mittal, CEO of NextGen Invent, and Sumit Agarwal, Senior Research Director, Gartner, Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning. I'm sharing the agenda for discussion on the screen. The way we plan to run this panel discussion is as follows. Air Marshal Matheswaran has already made his opening remarks. I shall be making shortly a base presentation to build up this subject for discussion, followed by a presentation by Sumit Agarwal, primarily focusing on the artificial intelligence aspect of IR 4.0, which will be followed by a presentation by Mr. Deepak Mittal, as he is a practitioner and he is executing various technologies and dimensions of Industrial Revolution 4.0 currently. We have requested him to give us an executor's perspective of what this revolution means in reality. How is it in action? What are the various aspects of it? What are the various success factors? We will follow this by a round of Q&A before we will request Marshal Matheswaran to make closing remarks. So this is the sequence of events today evening in India and today morning in US. With this, I welcome you all, and I invite myself to start the base presentation on Industrial Revolution 4.0. What is Industrial Revolution 4.0? Why are we discussing this? What is happening? And why is it important? Why is it important for us to know? Why is it important for us to discuss? And why is it important for us not to be a silent spectator of the change which is happening around the world, but rather be a participant and be an active contributor and try and leverage the changes happening towards the growth of our country and society and the economic systems. So with this, I go to my first slide. This slide basically talks about the history of industrial revolutions. Why are we calling this an industrial revolution? So far, if we go back to the history of mankind on this planet Earth, long back, around 10,000 years back, mankind started doing agriculture. And that was the first step that human beings took to differentiate themselves from the rest of the animals and plants. Since then, in so many years, there have been three significant, disruptive, sudden, and radical changes which have changed and defined the way our social life and economic structures exist. If we look back, we have a history of three industrial revolutions which transformed our world, and we are currently experiencing the fourth one. The first industrial revolution was primarily marked by the railroads and the railways, and this happened in the period between 1760 to 1840. The second industrial revolution is said to happen, in fact, happened between 1870 to 1930s, and this was marked by the usage of electricity and assembly line production. The third revolution happened in 1960s, 70s, and this was driven by computers, semiconductors, and internet. What we are experiencing now is the fourth industrial revolution. This fourth industrial revolution, the way it is different from the previous three revolutions, is that it is faster, it is broader in scale, and it is more impactful than the previous three which happened. Industrial Revolution 4.0 is being enabled primarily by a number of new technologies and enablers. Among them are mobile devices, IoT platforms, location detection technologies, advanced human-machine interfaces, authentication and fraud detection, 3D printing, smart sensors, biodata, analytics, multi-level customer interaction, customer profiling, augmented reality, and cloud computing. What this fourth industrial revolution is doing is that it is enabling a series of rather incredible new physical possibilities. And I club them under 4 headings. The first one is a major change in transportation enabled by autonomous vehicles. And autonomous vehicles are not limited to driverless cars. Autonomous vehicles now include a range of transport vehicles, big trucks, armed transport vehicles, and a range of vehicles which can take care of themselves, which can move without a human being driving them, sitting inside. The second physical possibility is enabled by 3D printing, or what we call as additive manufacturing. So far, human beings have known manufacturing to be a process in which you join multiple components or you machine a metal and create structures or create things for use. What 3D printing does is that it creates material and products with additive manufacturing, which is taking up new material and laying layers and adding up and creating structures. The third is the advanced robotics. We used to see this in a lot of movies earlier where the machines actually control all aspects of manufacturing. Advanced robotics is in action today in different places around the world, taking out a lot of human beings out of the production setup and making possible large number of or large quantities production without human beings intervening at all in the production process. And fourthly, on the physical dimension is the new materials, for example, graphene. We are now creating, we are now have created materials which are phenomenally different from the incremental improvements that we have been making on materials in terms of strength, flexibility, durability. Graphene, for example, is a wonder material which is hundreds of times stronger than steel, is lighter than cloth and flexible and provides numerous possibilities and will change completely the dimension of safety, wearables, and materials. At its base, the Industrial Revolution 4.0 encompasses transformative digital and biological trends. I will first cover the digital trends. They are broadly 3. The first of them is Internet of Things, largely enabled by 5G. What has happened so far is the world has seen telecommunication networks in usage for private communication. But as we speak, 5G networks for industrial application are getting executed, are already in action in many factories around the world, and the machines are talking between themselves using this technology. The second digital trend which is changing the way we transact finances is blockchain. Blockchain is phenomenally changing the way we used to manage our ledgers, the way we used to manage the security of our transactions. And the third game changer is the digital platform or a technology-enabled digital platform, in which a platform company or a platform provider creates a platform which basically connects the customer and markets, other customers and markets, communities, developers, research and development, other products, services, data, your product, services, and data. And you see a lot of work happening on this. One of the recent examples that the telecom industry has seen is the birth and setting up of Rakuten network in Japan. In last 2 years, or less than 2 years, they have created a network of the future on a digital platform, making it a super flexible and a super customer-friendly initiative. Eventually, what this digitalization does is that it creates a setup of what is commonly these days called as smart factory. In short, what the smart factory does is that if you look at the production or you look at how entrepreneurs carry out their business, there is always this game between customization and large-scale production. The scale gives you economies. So if you have scale, you are able to bring down the costs, and then you are able to sell your product at a competitive price in the market. But a bespoke or customized product is what customers prefer, but then that comes at a very, very high cost, and it has its own drawbacks. What a smart factory does is that it removes the pre-industry 4.0 setup of manufacturing production. It has two main drawbacks. One main drawback is that there is a quality issue, a customization issue. It is difficult to change. There is lack of flexibility, or what is now famously called as agility. And the fourth is there is very, very limited customer interaction. On the other side, the drawbacks are that if you get into customization, then the costs start becoming higher. And then you have a disadvantage that you can't compete with cheap mass manufacturers like Chinese producers, right? You can't compete with a high quality customized product in the market. And thirdly, you are limited to your local suppliers and customers. What the smart factory does is it creates a setup in which you can have the benefits of scale while you can add in the benefits of customization, eventually setting both the user's perspective as well as the producer's perspective by providing a continuous engagement using data sciences and artificial intelligence. There are multiple factors of IR 4.0 adoption. Primary among them are that it helps to reduce unplanned downtime, helps to create better risk profile, lower maintenance costs, extension of asset life, improvement of asset utilization, and improvement in production output. Digital manufacturing technologies like augmented reality, edge computing, big data, cloud, mobility, AI, smart systems, and IoT, using different themes, tech themes. A combination or a multiple combination of these is what is getting used into wireless sensor networks, machine connectivity, machine learning, predictive maintenance, connected logistics, additive manufacturing, robotics, apps and dashboards, drones, and autonomous systems. So what we are seeing is that we are seeing a mix and match of these multiple technologies into different usage across different industries. But now the penetration of these technologies is increasing to an extent that it has become really, really important. For example, if we just take a case of telecom industry 4.0, what is 4.0 bringing to the telecom industry? Keeping all other things static, over next 5 years, between 21 to 2025, the adoption of technologies of Industry 4.0 brings in 8.5% benefit of cost by bringing in technologies like robotics, asset tracking, connected products, condition-based monitoring, augmented reality, and other dedicated cellular solutions. This is a real case. This is a recent research which is published. So what I'm trying to show here is that at cost benefit of around 8.5%, keeping all other factors there is a big change. Now what has happened is a couple of days back, in fact almost a week back, McKinsey has published its latest report on Industrial Revolution. And what McKinsey is calling this Industrial Revolution 4.0 is industry manufacturing reset, or a great reset. And what has happened is that a couple of major companies around the world, including BMW, Nokia, Tata Steel, Alibaba, they have formed a global network, and this is called the Global Lighthouse Network. And currently, there are 54 factories or 54 sites all around the world as on June 2022, which are collectively adopting and implementing the various technologies of Industrial Revolution 4.0 to take benefit out of these technologies. And what these lighthouse companies are able to see, are able to prove, is that there are these 4 areas where they are getting very clear benefits. One is improved agility and customer centricity. Second is supply chain resilience. Third is speed and productivity. And fourth is eco-efficiency. This is a data published by World Economic Forum, and McKinsey has analyzed that and is saying that this is already achieved by this group of companies, which is together formed this forum called Lighthouse Network. And they have gone beyond productivity benefits of Industry 4.0. In fact, there are benefits of productivity, sustainability, agility, speed to market, and customization to different significant percentage points. Next, I come to the 4 important biological trends that we are seeing. The first one we are seeing is a human genome project. We will be running a separate panel discussion subsequently. What we are also seeing is synthetic biology, which is bringing together a multitude of sciences and a multitude of different industries, and is creating what was considered impossible earlier. It is synthesizing biological products. What we are seeing also is genetic editing, which is ability to make a change in the genetic structures, and hence the ability to control or change the physical features of a human being by genetic editing. And then finally, we are seeing bioprinting in action already. This has very good benefits for people who get injured in accidents, lose a part of their body, and using 3D printing and calling it, applying it into biology and creating bioprinting is enabling, this kind of unthinkable progress. So far, so good in terms of the beneficial dimensions of Industrial Revolution 4.0. But one of the disturbing elements of 4.0 is also the future of employment. While we are seeing that automation is increasing profitability, it is boosting economy, it is creating new kind of jobs, but we are also seeing that it is eliminating a lot of jobs. And what you see on your screen is a recent estimate of jobs which have, which have been automated. So the black fields are the jobs which are likely to be automated, and the white ones are the ones which are likely to remain. So this was an estimate a couple of years back. What we are seeing is that this projection is turning out to be quite true, which means that automation and new technologies are creating jobs, but there are a lot of jobs which are disappearing. And this is again creating some kind of an imbalance, and countries around the world and implementers around the world will have to look at how to address this. I just wanted to raise this for the forum's knowledge. And finally, the big change which is going to happen because of Industrial Revolution 4.0 is the way citizens interact with governments and the way governments have been treating its citizens. What is happening is that at the base of this Industrial Revolution 4.0, there are two things. There is artificial intelligence, which is enabled machines with a more humanly provided intelligence. On the other side, there are data sciences. What data sciences are doing is that they are taking away the sampling kind of, conclusions that we have been making up so far. And what they're saying is that rather than using a sample and making assumptions and making solutions to industrial and biological problems, which yet in so many what is much better is that you take the aggregate data, use that data and create a solution, not on a sample basis, but on the real basis. Now, what has been happening is that the government and the citizens have been interacting largely on the sampling basis, but as real data and artificial intelligence and technological innovation will start getting into public institutions, governance institutions, education institutions, the real data will emerge, and a lot of interaction and action will have to be taken on real issues rather than estimates. So with this, I conclude my presentation. My purpose of making this presentation was to tease you all about the dimensions of Industrial Revolution 4.0, to set up a discussion. What I'll do is I'll stop sharing my presentation now here, and to come back to the baseline point of our discussion today, that how is Industrial Revolution 4.0 unfolding around the world in the industries, in our social and economic structures. And I just gave an overview or a base view of what is happening around the world in the industries and in the social structures and the government structures. I would now invite Mr. Sumit Agarwal, Senior Director Research from Gartner, to share his presentation. And I would request him to try and give us an overview of the intersection between Industrial Revolution 4.0 and artificial intelligence. We understand that artificial intelligence is perhaps the most significant driver of this industrial revolution. Over to you, Sumit, and if you could share your presentation as well.
Thank you, Shuktij. Thank you, Air Marshal Matheswaran, for inviting me to this session, as well as Shuktij. It's a great pleasure. going to share my presentation in just seconds. So Shuktij talked about what is fourth industrial revolutions, and he mentioned that we are currently in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. I wanted to extend that thought there and point out that there are several versions of fourth industrial revolution. Right, so there's a technology view of it, but at the same time, it's kind of all around us. And a lot of these, and this is just a sampling, where we hear it by different names. Germany started it as Industry 4 in about 2011. But then, China has Make in China 2025. Japan has the Industrial Value Chain Initiative. And in India, we have the Make in India initiative that has been going on for a few years. So, and similarly, a lot of other industrialized countries have their own initiatives to leverage technology to take advantage of it and bring it into all aspects of our life. Now, it is real as well, right? So it's not just a lot of buzzwords and talk. It is real as well. Where I want to share a couple of stories about it. One is there is a steel wire company in Austria, which was established in 2017, so not that far back. And they create 500,000 tons of steel wire each year with a total of 14 employees. So think about a factory which is running 24 hours a day with total of 14 employees, which means that they probably have roughly about 3 to 4 employees in each shift who are managing the entire operations. Right? So that's just something which is really hard to believe when we see steel companies having thousands of employees. But this is what industrial revolution can do for you, where just imagine the competitiveness and the production efficiency that this company is able to get. And it's slightly scary as well. It kind of relates to what Shuktij was showing in his slide about impact to jobs. But then I'll talk a little bit about both of these and how AI impacts this. Another thing that we saw in one of the previous slides was around the McKinsey fourth industrial revolution lighthouse companies. So want to share a quick story about that one, where Nokia has a factory in Finland, which was recently awarded this this charter, and they have generated 30% productivity gains, 50% savings in time of product delivery to market, and savings of millions of euros each year. Right? So that's again just amazing what you can accomplish by using the technologies and the practices that come up with the fourth industrial revolution. So World Economic Forum kind of took the lead on bringing this all together, and they defined a set of technologies that are part of this initiative. Right, where we have a lot of these will seem like buzzwords and hype as well. But this is where a lot of the innovation is happening, and this is where they kind of touch upon different aspects of our life. So we have artificial intelligence and machine learning, which kind of create one of the fundamental technology sets. It comes to affect us when we talk about autonomous and urban mobility, especially when we think about autonomous driving or using AI in any of the technologies. Right, I was recently reading this story where the Delhi Metro is using predictive technologies as part of each of their metro cars. Right? So it's kind of inbuilt into the transportation infrastructure that's coming up. Right? Blockchain is all about trust. Data is everywhere. So data policy brings the focus on privacy. Right? When you have a lot of data, there's a risk of the data spreading around. You want to make sure that it's controlled, and we have a lot of these scary stories in recent past as well, where the data gets misplaced or not in the right places. Digital trade, where we are taking advantage of internet and transactions. Okay. Drones again, provide advancement of imaging as well as nautical technologies. And it's all about sustainability on Earth, right? So it doesn't make sense if you're just achieving improvements and you're not able to help the environment. Robotics, and then we talked a little bit about advancement within the biospace, right? So precision medicine is an excellent research space where a lot of these things are coming together. As we focus on just what is AI, and this is a question that I hear so often, right? That what is AI? So for a lot of people, it is magic, right? Things get done, but uh, I look as a technologist, I look at AI as a combination of three core technology areas. So machine learning, which includes things like neural networks, Internet of Things contributes to that. A lot of the sensor data contributes to that. There is natural language processing, which is where we talk about text. So things like Google Translate that we use a lot of times. But it goes beyond that, where we have you can generate languages. You can generate a paragraph of text. You can analyze what is the sentiment from that text. And then third one is computer vision, which is where things like facial recognition or using like a document image to figure out is this the right document or not. But as you are looking as industry leaders or government leaders, as you look to implement AI, it's hard to do all these three at the same time. So you have to decide that what is the scope of AI for you, right? You have to pick and choose from this list. And most often, machine learning is a more fundamental technology here. So it's often a combination where you would have something like machine learning and natural language processing, or you may choose machine learning intersection with computer vision. Now, why is AI important in this case, right? In case of fourth industrial revolution? So AI works on finding patterns based on historical data. So it doesn't know anything by itself, right? So in some sense, it's like a baby where you have to teach it how to find value from data. And I guess one common thread across the fourth industrial revolution or 4IR is that there's a lot of data that's going to be generated. Right? So you have all these devices taking advantage of 5G, a lot of equipment around you, right? A lot of manufacturing machines, right? They're all generating massive amount of data. So it could be something like, like a temperature reading from a manufacturing plant or an oil rig, or it could be a video stream coming from a drone, or could be like telematics data coming from a truck, which is part of a transportation fleet, or could be like a conversational data generated by an interaction with the customer service, right? So you could have a phone call or you could have a chat, right? So, but there is data all around us. Now, the technology view is a little bit harder, right? And it doesn't provide value unless it's related to a business outcome. So as you look to implement it, you have to think in terms of what does it really bring to your business? And there are a lot of, I guess, ways to think about it, right? So you have, when we talk about Internet of Things, you have sensor data that's coming in. Now, can you use it to predict equipment faults and prepare for a downtime in a more planned fashion, right? And in a more cost-effective fashion. So you don't have like a sudden just stoppage of equipment and then you're trying to figure out, right? So you're able to plan ahead of time. When you talk about robotics, right? Think about a drone which is sending a security feed, and you have or you have camera feeds, right, from security cameras, and you have thousands of those, right? So it's going to be humanly impossible to be on top of all of them. So can we use AI to flag those potential threats by monitoring those videos, right? And that's a business outcome. When we talk about conversational interactions with customer service, right? Could be a phone call, could be an online chat, right? So that is a technology part of it. But can you apply sentiment analysis, understand if your customer is happy or angry? Do you see new opportunities to identify focus sales? Uh, can you improve your marketing campaigns because now you know additional information about your customers? Um, so there's a lot of advantages, but you have to focus on what is the business outcome versus focusing on, okay, can I do AI? Right. Um, and we have done a lot of research on this topic in terms of what motivates businesses to invest in AI. So the number one factor that has come out in various surveys is related to customer experience. So ensuring that you have an improved and effective customer experience has been the leading motivator for AI investments. A lot of these use cases focus on increasing efficiencies, which translate into reduced costs, and that has been a second motivator. As you develop new solutions, right, there is new efficiencies, new products, right? So you're kind of able to differentiate, which is where additional revenue comes in, right? And that's a third motivator, right? So if I were to prioritize them, customer experience is number one, cost improvements is second, and revenue generation is number three. Now, when we talk about data around it, right, and combine this business outcome with the technology view, is where it's really a combination, and within this context of 4IR, right, it's a combination of operational technology, information technology, and data. Right. So if you go back and take that example of the steel wire company in Austria, which is producing 500,000 tons of steel wire with 14 employees, right? They have a lot of operational technology data coming through, right? So they have all the sensor information, all the equipment measurements, right, which they are able to get in real time. And it helps them to take actions like condition monitoring, condition-based alerts in real time. So if there is a fault that's happening, right, and if there's a pressure gauge which is exceeding a threshold, right, they're able to take action on it right away, just based on operational technology. But they are going beyond that, right? Where how do you take can you combine this with the AI technologies, with robotic process automation, with advanced analytics and data management to create those synergies where you're not able to just react, right? You're also proactive and respond to the large amount of data that you have, and you're able to predict that what's going to happen and plan accordingly, right? So when we look at all the previous examples, there is so many opportunities to combine the operational technology. So be it a transportation space, be it autonomous driving, robotics, right? All of them create a lot of operational data, and you can combine it with information technology to create more differentiated products. Now, the reason I'm bringing all of this is because there's like these new opportunities where, and to take advantage of this, you need to upskill people to work on these technology and architectures, right? You need to create a new infrastructure. So cloud has been a big enabler when we do these things, because with a lot of data, you need a lot of storage, a lot of compute. There is edge AI that has been emerging a lot, so that you don't have to bring all the data to the cloud or to the central server. You can take those actions right there, closer to your equipment. And there are new architecture patterns and serverless, and so there are new paradigms that are shifting, as well as it helps create new partnerships, where you can create new products, new services. So as I come close to my pitch on AI for fourth industrial revolution, I want to give you an action plan to operationalize, where where AI technologies, like I said, you need to the most important thing, and which is your first thing, is to define what are your expected business outcomes, and then work to use technology, including AI, as an enabler and as a differentiator. The one thing that is common and constant is data, right? And lots of it. So adopt and embrace data-driven decision making. You may need to create a vision and a culture to do this. As senior leaders within your organizations, you need to define the roadmap for that. You need to ask your teams to that to provide you data so you can make those informed decisions, create KPIs to measure success. It kind of goes top down, right? So you have an opportunity to influence and define your organization's culture to align with data. And it's going to require new operating models, right? We need new governance, architectures, privacy constraints as you go forward. You need new skills. So it's a good opportunity to upskill because that is the easiest. To combine the domain expertise that you already have with the new skills that are possible. And then time is of essence, right? So speed is important as you try to get new products into the market, right? So innovate, and at the same time create partnerships with other product and service providers, so you can create new solutions in a timely fashion. With this, thank you everyone. I look forward to the Q&A part of this session, and look to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit. Wonderful.
Thank you, Sumit. Excellent overview, and many thanks for giving us this very comprehensive and important coverage, especially focused on artificial intelligence. It was so nice that you presented what is AI in terms of machine learning, computer vision, natural language processing, how AI is connected with business value, combination of OT, IT, and data, and then eventually coming up with these 4 action plans to operationalize, focusing on business outcomes, creating a vision, updating the roles and responsibilities, and then innovating and leveraging partnership with product and service providers. Excellent coverage, Sumit. I do have some questions, but I'll wait for the Q&A to ask you those questions. I now request Deepak Mittal, CEO of NextGen Invent Technologies, to make his presentation. Deepak, a special request to you is that while we have an overview of 4.0 in terms of what are the different aspects, and then Sumit gave a very good overview of the role of artificial intelligence and how it intersects with 4.0. A request with you would be to give us a little bit of an overview of how this is happening. Request would be that if you could touch upon some areas, some cases, or some industries, and give us a little bit of a overview on how you are doing it and how you see this happening, being a very involved person in taking forward the adoption of 4.0 technologies. I welcome you to make your presentation.
Thank you very much, Shuktij. presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, here, Marshal, Matheswaran, and Dr. Shuktij for giving us this opportunity to come and speak about Industry Revolution 4.0. Just from a brief introduction of mine, I will probably be able to move this. Uh, uh, I'm basically the CEO and founder of NextGen Invent Corporation and Xtalytics. Both companies are US-based companies. And also the founder and CEO of NGI Ventures Private Limited, which is based out of India. From an education background, I'm a computer science engineer. I did my master's in operations management and did my MBA in strategy and entrepreneurship from Columbia Business School. It has been a pleasure that I have been part of various member of board of directors from in past 15 years, including Optium, Launchpad, and have been also chairman of different clubs, which are targeted towards how we can basically help executives in reaping the benefits of new technologies, in launching their new and innovative, disruptive products and services. In terms of NextGen Invent Corporation, we basically serve various industries. And NextGen Invent Corporation is a global professional services company. And in the space of IR 4.0, we provide 4 foundational services. And it all starts with data. As Sumit has told, actually a lot of data is being created. Now we basically don't talk about terabyte, gigabyte, we basically talk about zettabytes. And all that data, which is actually collected through Internet of Things, is stored in blockchain, and also data privacy or the trust is built through the blockchain. But at the same time, a lot of system integration is actually happening to bring all the customers, the partners, the ecosystem together. And the information which was in silos now is actually being put together to make the overall value chain decision, which is critical. And how that data is converted into insights, and how those insights are actually delivered to the customers in the way of human machine interaction. So how the data is actually converted into insights is basically like Sumit actually talked about the machine learning, AI, image and video analysis, and also advanced analytics itself. And using that insight, improving the customer experience. And the way to improve the customer experience is how we use that in the virtual reality, augmented reality, be able to see what is actually the experience going to be, what will be the customer journey going to be, and how we can actually change that, how we can change the overall business process, how we can provide that information to the customer or to the user. And user can be the employee, a partner, a vendor, or a customer itself, or a customer's customer, the way you basically look at it. And also helping in the 3D printing in terms of advanced engineering, predictive maintenance, and other things. We serve various industries, which includes life sciences, finance, education, and also supply chain and retail. In this particular slide, I'm actually going to cover the life science 4.0 and how we basically see the different processes in these industry sectors and how IR 4.0 has changed the value chain, how companies were delivering the value, and how customers were getting the value. In the case of healthcare and hospital, we know that the patients are basically not medically adhering. So there is a $637 billion problem which pharma industries has, that people do not take drugs in time as they are prescribed to them. They basically miss their prevention care, and there are prevention care gaps. As a result of that, they end up in the ER, emergency rooms. And also the hospitals are less effective and efficient in utilizing their high value assets. So the way we basically have helped them in one of the things is the smart admission. With the help of the weather data and 18 different data sets, when we combined together, we were able to identify that the patient is actually having what kind of risk 20 days in advance. Readmission models, which can actually tell what is the risk going to be for a patient 30 days in advance. What are actually the prevention care gaps, so that we can actually alert them to come to the hospital and get actually that condition taken care of, so that they are actually not reaching to the hospital in a ER fashion. Once they have reached to the hospital, how we basically helped hospital is that be able to identify the risk of the patient, of their disease based on the medical history, and also the length of stay prediction, whether they can be released in 3 hours, 6 hours, or after tomorrow. All those predictions are actually made, which are very useful for payer who is actually paying for it, and also for the hospital to effectively plan their high value assets, which is operation room, different medical equipments, and most importantly, surgeons itself. And the third is the helping the hospitals in running their operations way more effectively. So there we basically use deep learning algorithms to actually identify the objects, where their high value assets are, and be able to use that to do the optimization, what is actually the utilization of a high value asset has been, how we can improve it, how the operation rooms actually have been used. All that operations automation actually has changed this industry. And we basically believe, as Sumit Agarwal said, we are in the middle of IR 4.0. We believe that in the coming years, we will have a lot more innovations coming in this field also, and the efficiencies will actually remove the wastage we actually currently have. In the case of diagnostics, if you take an example today, how the diagnostic value is delivered to the patient. A patient goes to a doctor prescribe a lab test, they go and get the lab test done, doctor sees that and then prescribes. However, that way of providing value chain is going to change dramatically. And we are working with some of the top companies in this field, where we are basically putting the knowledge base within the lab equipments. The lab equipments directly have access to the patient health records and also the biomedical literature, which is available throughout the world. We don't even know that tomorrow a new article might actually come, which maybe physician has not read, but this machine actually has access to it. Based on that information, the medical device itself is actually deciding that now I got, say, for example, a blood sample. I'm actually not going to do this test, which is actually asked by the doctor, but I also at the same time, I will actually capture this information. And that is actually basically provided to the doctor. And at the same time, the doctor can prescribe the medicine. Pharmacy can track whether the medicine has been given to the patient, but the lab test is the only way to actually tell patient has really taken the medicine or not. And that is basically progress monitoring using the medical devices itself is happening. Diagnostics happening. The third is the medical devices. We live in 2021. In 21st century, there are still hundreds of places, thousands of places where there is no internet, And the woman can actually not get the diagnosis done for even their breast cancer diseases. And they die because of that. So we basically work with National Institute of Health, which is a government or US government organization, get the grants from them and work with Dr. Susan Love Breast Cancer Research Foundation, which is #1 breast cancer research foundation in the world, to build an algorithm, put that AI algorithm in the mobile device, connected with a very low resolution ultrasound device, which can take the low resolution ultrasound images, and give these devices to caregiver who are not actually doctors. They are basically were trained only for 3 hours or 4 hours, and they were able to get to the remote places of Mexico and were able to detect 300 women who basically were at the risk of breast cancer. And we are planning to roll out this technology throughout the world, which is going to change the way the edge computing, as we call it, is actually conceived by the people at the end of using the technology. Pharma companies, with the COVID-19 actually in place, we are basically seeing that the manufacturing is the key, and it takes billions of dollars in bringing a drug to the market. And it takes a lot of time to bring to the market as well. And after you have brought the drug to a market, it requires a lot of efforts to get the drug in the right places. And that's where we are actually helping the pharma companies in doing that, by identifying which patient will be good for clinical trial and be able to help in that, helping in the predictive maintenance, sensor, quality controls, and commercialize that technology by saying that how the patient journey is when they are actually switching from one drug to another, from high strength to low strength, and how they are actually using the drug, and be able to provide them the supply chain transparency, which they never had it before, to get some of the critical drugs right now to the market. And it goes to the vaccine as well. So, and the different paradigms which you might be seeing in newspapers is that even though the drug vaccine has not been designed, there are actually manufacturing happening. So there is a lot of predictive demand, and where that vaccine will be shipped so that it can be easily accessible to, based on the predictive demand of the patients itself, is actually the key in all these areas. As we were talking about supply chain, from our point of view, there are 6 pillars which are actually needed to take the supply chain to a new era. And it all starts with data, where we are able to bring the data from various places, from the order management, from the customer behavior, from every click user is doing, every order which is coming, from every raw material which has been captured 15 layers down from your perspective, from a manufacturer perspective, and how all that is actually used in integrated business planning is actually the key here. And be able to use that information in the automated production, and at the same time helping the operators in their remote assistance, giving them the training through the virtual reality. An example is Help Me See. That particular non-profit organization currently teaching surgeons on how to do eye surgeries using virtual reality. Warehouse automation, be able to help in bringing the efficiency. Right now, a lot of time actually is spent in warehouse in picking up the items. Using the augmented reality for various various companies which actually operate warehouses, we have been able to bring that cost reduction and efficiency by 30%. Predictive demand. supply chain transparency, how we basically use telemetry and bring that transparency in a war room dashboard and also to the customers. And it all actually is for customer experience, where every marketing manager can actually take the decision is that if they have $100 million, will they basically spend on Google advertising? Will they spend on Facebook advertising? How will they actually reach and change the customer behavior or help the customer in making the right decision about their products? When we basically start any IR 4.0 initiative, Sumit Agarwal told about the action plan. So definitely there is going to be a purpose for an organization or for a country why they want to actually embark on IR 4.0 initiative. And when executives comes to us that, okay, they want to start an IR 4.0 initiative, we always tell them that let's do a SWOT analysis of some or these 4 key areas so that we can actually have the right structure in place for that IR 4.0 initiative to be successful. The number 1 is that what is actually triggering that IR 4.0 initiative? It is distress because your organization is actually losing customers, losing market share. That's why you are actually thinking of IR 4.0. Or you're actually just doing, your revenue is actually going up and up, but still at the same time, you want to capture the new value, the new wave to increase the market share even more. What is the organization DNA? Do you have a lot of legacy? The IBM actually went into the cloud environment and they are no way close to what actually AWS has achieved in terms of cloud computing. Blockbuster, which was providing videos, disappeared after 2010, and the new player, Netflix, actually gained the market share, and they are basically have a market cap of in more than $250 billion. Stakeholders, how many stakeholders are actually going to sign off before you can make a decision? What is the risk appetite and the culture of the organization? If you will fail, what will be the repercussions? Will the organization be willing to take that failure and learn from it and then start the new initiative after that? Whether you are creating a need or feeding a need, whether you are in a Tesla kind of situation where you are completely building a new need which was never there before by combining various innovations together, or you are actually in an iPhone stage where the smartphone already existed and now you are that market, you're capturing the market by better product. And once you will analyze all of these, you can actually put together a structure, maybe carve out a small venture within the big organization, which can actually have the right ingredients for your IR 4.0 initiative to be successful. It varies case to case. There is no silver bullet to it, but we really suggest to think about all these 4 items and make sure that you have the right ingredient before you actually start your IR 4.0 initiative itself. And of course, like Sumit Agarwal and also Dr. Shuktij has talked about, there will be always a purpose, and that purpose has to be met. But for that purpose, which is going to be met through an IR 4.0 initiative, the SWOT analysis is needed. Once you have started the IR 4.0 initiative with a purpose in mind, whether that purpose is increasing the capacity, improving your capabilities, increasing your revenue, have a better customer experience, or having the optimization. These are the 7 areas I will always suggest to have the KPI around these 7 areas, which you can actually monitor on a daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis. Because this, if you will have pulse on these 7 items, from a technology perspective, you will always be able to agile and make the right decision along the way. The first is the right problem. You started an IR initiative. At that time, the problem might have been the right problem, but we have to evaluate with the time in 6 months down the road, is it still the right problem? What the problem, what was defined in January 2020 by many companies was not actually the right problem when in the June 2020. So the market is actually going to change along the time. Incentives, the people are actually big part of any initiative success. And if I will take an example, the IBM incentivized their salespeople on actually a software as a product, then AWS incentivizing their salespeople on software as a service, which has a different parameters of incentives, actually can impact positively and negatively on your IR initiative success. Customer experience and user experience always wins. If you are going to make a life easy of an executive, a user, a partner, a vendor, or end user, it will always be helpful. We have to keep an KPI of value in mind. Whatever that purpose is and whatever those KPIs has been highlighted, normally it will fall under 3 or 4 different categories. Either you're increasing the capacity, what was actually $1 billion cost before, now it is actually $10, or you have new capabilities, or you're doing the optimization, or you are basically increasing the improving the customer experience. All that KPI has to be kept in mind. Ecosystems, when the data will cross the boundaries of an organization, which is actually the key thing which has to be done for IR 4.0 to be successful. When the new value chain will be decided, you have to make sure that your organization actually is adding value or are able to capture more value in the new and modified value chain. You would like to share the data, you might require to share the data, but how you share the data. If I take an example, Nike is very, very scared that they don't want actually their products to be available on Amazon, because now they basically think that the customer experience or customer information is actually more with the Amazon. And in the new value chain is that now manufacturers are directly able to target the customers. They are bypassing the retailers itself. And especially it has been fueled by COVID-19 as well. Tame the fear. Of course, the new skills will come in, and some skills will be obsolete as well. And in the IR 2.0, there was a lot of industry revolution. Textile industry moved. I think the Henry Ford, as we all know, made car available to every human being who is financially stable. From that perspective, it has created more jobs. In when there was a population of 2 billion people, Industry Revolution 2.0, which was actually the biggest disruptor to textile, automobile, and many industries. Now we basically even have jobs for 8 billion people. People were working 7 days, then they start working 6 days. Now we work actually 5 days in technology industry. They might actually start working 4 days. However, in my opinion, is that there are going to be more jobs, but definitely a shift of skills. AI ML is actually the core of IR 4.0. The key things for an executive to keep in mind is that AI and ML are the black box sometimes, and we have to enforce and guide the team to make it more and more explainable. that the results which are coming, the predictions which are coming, how we can actually explain. And what a model is actually giving the right results today might not be actually giving the right results after 1 year. So how you will audit to avoid that risk? And you cannot have that risk actually within the organization where you have a black box taking a decision, and after a year or 2 years, it is start actually taking wrong decision on the predictive maintenance. Ethics, whenever there is a data privacy, you have to keep into account is for the long-term viability of the organization, how the ethics plays into it. Real-time AI is a baby. The more you will feed him, the more he will learn or she will learn. So from that perspective, how we feed and keep this real-time learning available. Humanity in AI. The AI is now not actually seen as the unit which will take all the decisions, but it is actually now seen as that in the processes, AI will actually provide the information to, say, for example, provider, and provider can actually make that life and death decision. And all that is actually tied to the business person. With that said, I will basically be happy to answer any question. Back to Dr. Shuktij.
Thank you, Deepak. Thanks a lot. You gave a very comprehensive coverage. And just to round that up, you started with foundational services and gave us an overview of life sciences 4.0, covering healthcare, hospital, diagnostics, medical devices, and pharma, followed by supply chain 4.0. And then you showed us a framework for IR 4.0 business, SWOT analysis for organizational readiness, very useful tool, covering what is the trigger, what is the organization's DNA, what is the need, and what is the risk appetite. And finally, you gave those 7 areas which you're calling the secret sauce of success of implementation of 4.0, and you know, kind of giving us the success factors. So with that, we actually come to a conclusion of the base presentations for this panel discussion. I see there are a lot of questions as well. While I would request Marshal Matheswaran to see some of those questions, and I may also request the participants to also be ready to ask us any questions that they would like to ask. I see that there are people who've joined from Europe, there are people who've joined from different countries as well. Meanwhile, you know, being a moderator, I will take my right, exercise my right of asking the first question. And my first question would be to Sumit, primarily, and this is a very, this is perhaps a very simple question for you, but perhaps a very important questions for people, for us in India. And what happens is that, you know, the Indian education system or the Indian job system, especially the government jobs and a lot of private institutions these days, depend upon entrance tests and examinations followed by personal interviews, and whether it is somebody seeking admission in IIT or somebody seeking admission for an MBA course in IIM, or somebody else seeking admission in a government service, whether it is a Indian administrative services or Indian, you know, provincial services. A lot of our selection process depends upon a written test followed by a face-to-face test. Now, in the kind of times we are living in, thanks to COVID-19, we want to know whether artificial intelligence can help us to conduct our entrance examinations from people and students and job seekers attending these written tests from their homes, and also, as a first stage, and then at the second stage, how can AI help to make this remote experience of interaction closer to a face-to-face interaction? So, question to you, Sumit. Your views on this.
Excellent question, Shuktij. Definitely not an easy one. So with the time and challenges we are in society this year due to the pandemic, there's a lot of shift that is already happening, and especially in terms of education and testing, right? Where the way we saw classroom education and the way the testing was happening and the way it was used, right? All of that is being forced to have a transformation, right? I'm sure nobody imagined that most students will be studying online versus and having a video interaction with the teachers. And same goes for testing, right? It's extremely challenging to have so many students in a classroom or in a test center at the same time. So there's fair amount of shift happening there, where and we are already seeing this shift even before COVID happened in some cases, where for example, for job interviews, companies are already relying on technology versus that in person question answer, where you could take a technical test online, and the questions will be more adaptive based on what you're able to answer. Right. There is AI-based solutions that have been coming in that space to understand, how good that person really is to kind of catch fraud that's been happening there. And when you have so many applications coming in, how do you filter out that who are the best people? Within the education space, there are companies who are looking to identify students who are being focused in a class. So I'm assuming that the same solutions will be extended in an online space as well, to see from a video stream maybe that are you actually focused in a class, right? So there is going to be that major shift using AI technologies, especially where a lot of it is relying on video. So analysis of that video, finding out the right information and taking advantage of that to evolve the overall education system, at least for the near term. Thanks.
Okay.
If I may,
Yes, please, Deepak.
if I may add, actually, is sometimes we might actually start asking the question is that if we were doing this the way we were doing before, was it right thing to do as well? What I mean by that is the task necessary? Is that one task at the end of 12th is going to define who you are and what your capabilities are? So in my opinion, I think as an executive and some of the policymakers also have to think is that, are we going to change the paradigm, or we are and use the technology to enable a new process in evaluating that, or we are basically going to use the technology to make it possible in the COVID-19 situation by using that. So what I mean by that also, if you think the California state has actually said that the students are not required to actually give SAT test for 4 years. So they are actually thinking and struggling at the same time is that how they can actually evaluate the students' capability. And in that case, it becomes actually easier than actually harder, is that how you will actually see the progress over the 3 years, 2-year period time, and take that into account and actually make an informed decision for a college, for an organization, and things like that.
That's a very important point, Deepak, because I think the limitation why this kind of an approach was not possible earlier is the Herculean task of managing that kind of monitoring process. And now probably with technology availability, maybe that paradigm change is required, because we built a society which is based on one exam, one does actually. So I think we need to move away from that. That's a very good, observation.
And at the same time is that distress versus do better, in a sense that now there is a need, COVID-19, because we cannot do it. We are actually kind of forced, and digitization and some of the IR 4.0 supply chain and AR innovation is actually, or at least the adoption of it is happening at a faster rate than what I have seen in the past 3 years.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Shuktij. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Deepak. And the second question that I want to ask is that, we are, and this is specific to our country, India, we are a country of 1 billion aspirations. And like you, two people, we find that wherever anything, incredible is happening, you will find an Indian there, right? But in most of the cases, the owners are not Indians. The owners are still sitting in other countries. One of the things we as a country, as we have aspirations to be in the top 3 for sure in a couple of years, one of the areas, one of the enabling forces is innovation, and what we call as frugal innovation, which means we do or achieve the purpose, or perhaps the required percentage of the purpose fulfilled by a costly product. For example, in military parlance, we want to create something at a fraction of a cost, whether in military, whether in software. In software, we do it. We are selling it cheap to the world. That's a separate story. We've not been able to leverage it fully. But someday will come when the hardware and software separation, which is happening currently, will enable us to catch up with the world fast. The question that I want to ask both of you is, do you think the artificial intelligence and data sciences, the artificial intelligence question to you, Sumit, and the data sciences question to you, Deepak, do you think they can help us to create products and solutions and systems and institutions at a lightning speed at a fraction of a cost? Can we see much more number of innovations coming out of India, in a frugal way?
So if I basically, I think it is already started to happen. If I take an example of pharmaceutical industry, the amount of tests which we were used to do on mice, now we basically talk about digital mice, is that we are able to do those tests and reduce the time frame what it actually takes for launching a particular drug, has already squeezed, and it's actually going to squeeze a lot more from that perspective. And once the information is actually already there, as I will take an example of Sumit, means 14 people actually doing the production of 500,000 tons of steel in Austria. I think the technology is making it possible that the things can be predictive in nature, so the action can be taken, and the right action can be taken at the right time, well in advance, is going to expedite. And we have seen easily is for our customers between 30% to actually 200% improvement in reducing the time, or actually the benefits, or actually bringing the new capabilities. What I'm actually more excited about is the innovation, which is a blue ocean word in a sense, is that the technologies and products which were not there at all before, and those will actually made available to the customers as part of this, in addition to being improvement or into the existing products and services.
Right. Excellent point, Deepak. Just to extend that. So, Shuktij, when you talk about frugal innovation, or like we normally call it jugaad, right, which has made into the even Harvard Business Review talks about it, is where there is a lot of innovation, right? You're trying to make use of limited resources and solve problems. Right? In AI, in some ways, is trying to do the same thing, right? Where you're trying to find those opportunities that you didn't know existed, right? Or the insights that were missing. Right? So there have been already a lot of startups, especially within India, who have been working on these ideas and technologies, right? And the example that Deepak had shared before about using a mobile device to identify breast cancer. The other companies are working on similar lines, right? For example, Google was working on identifying infections using a retina scan, right? Doing it through a normal, like a mobile device scan. So there have been a lot of innovations, understanding the need and resources that are available using the AI technologies. And I think there's so much opportunity to do more in this space.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Over to Marshal Matheswaran. We see a lot of questions coming up.
Yeah.
Maybe one, we see Rafael Herc from Spain has joined and he's asked a question. Raf, would you like to ask your question directly? Sir, Rafael is a very senior customer experience and services professional known around the world.
Is he online?
Yeah, he seems online, but I don't know. He's typed a question, maybe.
Okay, I'll read that out. No issue. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shuktij, and thanks for the panelists for a wonderful, fabulous presentations, extremely well-focused, Sumit and Deepak and Shuktij. There are a lot of questions, so without wasting time, and my questions, I'll keep it to the end. Let me read out from the audience. First is Vishal Badri's, where is the line drawn in the possible regulation of machine learning and AI to ensure privacy but does not impinge on the objectives and projections of the corporations?
So
go ahead.
So I think privacy is number one, right? And there are so many regulations, and especially customer privacy, right? Where so many regulations have been coming in this space. European Union has GDPR. I know Niti Aayog in India has been working on something very similar. There's a Algorithm Accountability Act in US, right? So there is, pretty much all the leading countries, they have been coming out with regulations to protect customer privacy. At the same time, right, it needs to be balanced with innovation. But even there, it's like, as you find problems, new ideas come in. So there have been new innovations coming in such a way where privacy can be conserved and innovation can move ahead. Techniques like federated learning in the AI space, and a lot of focus on differential privacy is another one that has been coming up to ensure that privacy is preserved while innovation can still move ahead.
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
To add to that, actually, I think federated learning is actually really has been picked up quite a lot, and in also federated learning has also helped in finding out the value of the data before actually that value has been captured or a lot of investment has been done. But in my opinion, I think there is no line which is between the privacy which you can actually draw. Because I think as an organization, you have to think what is ethically you would like as right or wrong. It is not going to be a decision of a government because if you will go from industry to industry, now there is a HIPAA and HIT trust for the healthcare, then the US has different laws, then the UK has a different law, India will have their own different laws. And so I think my suggestion will be is that you as an organization or as a country, you have to define what you think is ethically correct. What your conscience will actually say that I am actually going to use the AI in this fashion, which is actually going to be benefit without actually invading the privacy of the patient or the customer or the user or the employee. So that's the line organization will be drawing. But of course, to prohibit the countries will and the organizations will keep on actually enforcing, and there will be a socio effect as well. What is actually is acceptable today of sharing the data of patient in India, which now may actually change tomorrow very soon, when country will actually decide, no, I don't want to actually let anybody use the patient data at any level by anyone.
That's true. However, I think there will be violators in the corporate world, but there's also a dimension on the state, being able to actually play an excessively controlling role in over the citizens, because the data so much is available, and China is a classic example of all that. So I suppose that's going to be an issue. Let me come on to the next question from Commodore Mathapan. Impact of IR4 will have a very negative impact on India with such large population, with low tech absorption as compared to nations with lower and declining populations and higher levels of technology absorption. Till now, our strength was in our numbers. How do you reconcile this contradiction? And will IR4 really help India? Any of the three panelists? You can start.
So I would basically say the low tech absorption can be seen as a disadvantage or actually an opportunity. In a sense, right now, the organizations like AIMAI and others are actually driving the infrastructure within the country, and usage of mobile devices and internet and new technologies within the country is increasing. So if that is actually increasing at such a rate, which is not actually happening in some of the other countries which has already seen high level of tech absorption, to me, the market is expanding, the number of users are expanding, and the technology is actually making it possible for a lot of new entrepreneurs. You have 1 billion aspirations, that's what Shuktij said. I said we have 1 billion entrepreneurs also. And those entrepreneurs, if they can actually bring new product and services, at least, and some of them will be driving towards how that low tech absorption can be a high tech absorption. And when more and more tech product and services which are customer friendly are available, everybody will use it. And the economy of scale will make it possible for India to bring that product and services to the market, which is not possible for small countries with the high tech absorption.
That's true. Very well. Sumit, any points from your side?
Yeah, to extend Deepak's point, telecom has been a great success story across the world, what India has done, right? Where you cannot imagine, how internet would spread, and India has probably the largest user base of internet worldwide, and that too at such amazing prices. So we envy that within US, where the prices are so low and still so successful. So I think there has to be innovation, right? And how these services are rolled out. Exactly the point that Deepak made. But then see the flip side of it is that we need global competitiveness in this world, right? Where we don't want our industries to be lagging behind, and there has to be that balance between that. And so it's certainly going to need a massive upskilling program to bring a lot of people up to speed on what this can done, what can be done.
Absolutely right. That's a big challenge. Shuktij, any points from your side?
So I think they've covered both. There is a Mr. Akshay Kumar from Ericsson who's joined in, so he wants to ask a question. Can we request him? Akshay, can you come online on video and ask the
Yeah,
question?
I'm there. Good evening to the panel.
Go ahead.
And extremely good presentations. We had very knowledgeable sessions from Mr. Deepak and Mr. Sumit. Let me take you, for a few minutes to a culture. An Indian culture had been, Sanatan, and there had been a way of life which was covered by an ancient language. We call it Sanskrit, and it was known as a very ancient language and very scientific language. Now we are living in a period where we call digital age, where we are defining our ways of living through AI and machine learning. So can the extreme panel over there, the excellent panel over there, can I have two questions for them. One is, can we make use of Sanskrit and AI ML to create something which can be useful for our mankind in the present age? My second question is, we have heard and we are listening to number of views that are coming through YouTube and other mechanism where the people are predicting corona through astrological astronomical ways of life. So can we take this science, AI ML, to do some predictive analysis like what Mr. Deepak has explained, that they are able to predict diseases? So these are the two questions that I have for the extreme panel over there. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, okay. Sumit, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks. So it's a tough question, and Sanskrit has been a great language and foundation of, I think, most languages that are spoken today. And I was involved in a project many years back where I think there was research going on using Sanskrit as a foundation of kind of interpreting other languages through using computer science and technology. Now, with the I guess with the expansion of AI, some of that has changed. Where we recently had a natural language generation library called GPT-3 that was launched, right? Which, with the availability of compute, right, we're able to do kind of a similar solutions that we were looking to use using Sanskrit as a base. They have been taking advantage of using the massive compute that's available on cloud, right? And taking, I think, few trillion words, 450 GB of data from large amount of websites to come up with a model that can generate text for you. Now there are challenges, right? It's still there's still challenges that they have to solve, but it's good progress. Now, the where I think AI has an advantage or brings a lot of promise is that conserving what we already had. So there was this project that was done where there's a script in Japan where there are maybe less than 10 people who know how to speak that or understand that script. So it was pretty much lost. And they're using AI to conserve that script so that if you have that kind of text, you're able to translate it into a different language so that, like we have with Mayan script that nobody can understand anymore. Right? Same things do not happen with other languages. And then even on like manuscripts that have identified where you still cannot understand what they mean. Again, AI is being used to interpret what is involved there. So I think AI has a big role, right? But the challenge has been that it's dependent on data. So what you teach, how good your data is to teach, the outcome really depends on that. So I'm hoping that helps. I look to Deepak to add.
Thank you. Thank you, Sumit.
Go ahead, Deepak. Yeah.
Well, excellent actually points. I will actually add, or maybe just expand Sanskrit to various other fields like Ayurveda, or some of the things probably we as Indian have grown up and have heard actually from our grandfather, grandmother, how we basically use that. In my opinion, I think it comes down to two things. One is, what is the value? Whether you can prove the value. The traditionally, whether it is Ayurveda or it's Sanskrit, we understand that there is a value. However, we have tough time in proving the value that it actually works. And I think that's where a lot of value from the data which has been captured throughout and what is actually written in that Sanskrit and be able to relate it to the real world stories and prove that this is actually happening in these cases and this case is not. If I will take in case of Ayurveda, means it is a prevention based model, not a cure. I mean, it basically acts more on the prevention, and it is very hard to prove from a clinical perspective is that that actually works. And by having this, a lot of data which is available outside, we can actually be able to get that data and then prove that it actually works. I will tell one example. My son, when I basically asked, is that, haldi doodh actually you should drink. And he said, why? I said, it actually helps. He said, where is the proof? And I basically took a lot of time on looking on the internet and I couldn't prove him. But after 3 years, I can actually tell him that you were actually getting sick 5 times a year 3 years ago. In the last 3 years, it has actually gone down to 3. I can actually prove him with the data, and now he can actually not refute me. So that kind of data is, I think, is going to get applied to many things which we basically have, and we believe that there is a value, but we are not able to prove to the world that there is a value. And that's where it will come a lot more valuable.
That's true. In fact, I must tell about Shiv Ayadure in MIT, who's actually doing research with respect to Siddha medicine, who is going into actually compiling a lot of the activities that you said, trying to get a scientific methodology to prove each one of them and record a lot of data. So let me come on to, we rush through some of the questions. We are running out of time.
Maybe, sir, if you allow me, may I answer his second question, actually?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so, this Sanskrit part is already answered by Deepak and Sumit. So, Akshay, your point about the application of AI and ML in terms of predictive maintenance and the concept of finding a fault before the fault happens and correcting it. I don't know, maybe you missed our last panel discussion on telecom because we did cover a little bit there, but just to answer you in brief, and maybe we can have a separate discussion on this. What we are going to see in over next 1 year to 3 years is a complete adoption of AI and ML in network operations, maintenance, in telecommunications. As we speak, this is already in action in different parts of the world. The traditional models of global network operations centers that Ericsson and Nokia have adopted, wherein there are these operation centers set up in countries like India or in Lisbon or in US, and then you control and you monitor, detect faults from a distance remotely. But then the corrective action and that is where the ML becomes really interesting, because that is how that automatically there is the learning of studying large volumes of data and picking up patterns and picking up faults and correcting them. So to answer your question, yes, very much, and we will see this happening at a very, very high speed, especially in telecom networks around the world. Yes, but the model may become different because of the kind of situation we are in, because of the kind of geopolitical situations which are emerging now, because of the fact that we are actually moving towards a Cold War 2.0 kind of a world order. It may not be a global 1 GNOC or 3 GNOCs around the world monitoring all networks. We may see, and this is my prediction, that we will see mushrooming of small centers which will be within the country or within the industry where this kind of operation management will happen.
Thank you, Shuktij. Here's a question for the panelists. Artificial intelligence is one of the key pillars from Vishal Sharma. Key pillars of IR 4.0, but it's still limited by data and scenario-based models. One push is that is currently happening primarily in China, is chased closely by the US, is for artificial general intelligence, AGI. AGI could make application of modern models from one context into another human-like, thereby making utilization of learning from one context into another much more feasible and smooth. Could this transformation of the smart factories into intelligent enterprises that will be able to adapt to provide different types of products and services, and not just products, customized versions of the same kind, result in another leap for IR 50? Yeah.
It's a very, very interesting question, and goes into what we basically have it today and what will actually happen tomorrow. And to be frank, when I was little, I was watching Star Trek movies, and I actually thought that what is actually possible, and then start seeing actually the Terminator movies where the machines were actually fighting, and in the last movie when person was actually seeing, was not even aware of that he's actually machine inside. So definitely, as we have seen in movies, the revolution of how actually is conceived by the creative thinkers, as AI will go from one stage to another, it will be making many more decisions than what is actually possible today. And it actually scares a lot of people also, and it basically makes a lot of people happy as well. In my opinion, I think the regulations will be coming in play as well, that what processes and controls can be in place. But to answer Vishal Sharma's question, is definitely the what AI and ML can do today, which is making the decision. And right now we are talking about explainable AI and humanity in AI, where decisions are in the end are taken by the user itself, or the expert itself. That is actually going to change, and that can actually lead into the IR 4.5.0.
Thank you. Sumit, anything from your side?
Yeah, no, that was a great thought, Deepak. I was thinking about Star Trek as well, and science fiction is usually, a leading indicator on what is going to come, right? It a lot of time gives ideas and motivates people. So I think science fiction authors are the best predictors of what is the art of possible. So, right. But with that said, I think there is still a lot of transformation opportunities that are still out there, right? And techniques such as reinforcement learning kind of lead us into this on that path, right? Where today's world, AI is able to win games. So what's stopping it from not evolving and doing a lot more autonomously, right? We have Tesla, which is a car, but it's thought more of as a software. So, right. So Vishal, to answer your question, I think there's going to be a huge amount of transformation, and will it be called IR5 is to be known, but I think transformation is probably the biggest constant in that state, in that question.
Thank you, Sumit. Here's one from Rafael Herg. I think it's from Spain. For Sumit and Shuktij, there is hope that 4IR will encourage economic growth and structural information. Now, looking at this from a global perspective, Africa had been often described as being left behind during the past industrial revolutions. What are your thoughts? Will AI and blockchain getting more interest in Africa? And do they have the potential to successfully address social and economic challenges? And how does this help India?
So maybe I can quickly give my views. Meanwhile, Sumit can look for a more accurate answer to this question. But I do agree to Rap's observation that unfortunately, the underdeveloped parts of the globe have been missed out time in the first industrial revolution and the second. In my view, the third revolution has been an equalizer of to a certain degree. I think to whether Industrial Revolution 4.0 would flatten the world further, I would reserve my comment on that because it has, again, two parts. And so while the third revolution was more on the information technology, the fourth revolution, as Sumit had covered in his presentation, is a marriage of operations technology with the information technology. Now, to make use of the fourth revolution, you need to have operations, to use IT. You need to have OT to leverage fourth revolution fully. However, having said that, at the base of it, I think technology is a flattening force. There are elements and there are aspects of IR 4.0 which will bring Africa into, which will bring them to an inflection point. My view is a country like India got included with the world due to the third revolution. Between the second revolution and the third industrial revolution, India was disconnected. The developed part of the world which had made use of the first and the second industrial revolution. Third industrial revolution brought in companies like India and China into the fray. Fourth revolution, and then the very interesting point which got discussed in the previous question is about the fifth industrial revolution. Eventually, my view is that this flattening will happen. How it will unfold is something that we will have to open and see. It will be difficult to make a prediction at this stage. Sumit?
Yeah, great point, Shuktij. And it's a challenge when it comes to to smaller economies. And Africa often is called the lost continent when we talk about a lot of these technology innovations. But that said, there has been a lot of work going on in countries like Kenya and Ghana, and I think few others, where there have been a lot of open source initiatives. There have been non-profit initiatives who are trying to expand the technology innovations. There have been a fair number of startups as well, who again, on the lines of frugal economy, of frugal innovation, they have been trying to create solutions which apply to those circumstances and to those economic conditions. So I think, and they have an opportunity because they are lower cost solution. They can be pretty competitive when you bring them to scale and to larger economies. So I think when you bring this in context to India, I think there is, again, we have startups who are trying to take advantage of similar ideas. And there's a lot of work that's going on. To give another example on that one, there is, within the space of online tutoring, and I was reading this article where Kenya is kind of the powerhouse on that, where a lot of people, because of the English-speaking background and education, they're able to conduct online classes and and help with assignments to students worldwide. Right. So in this age, again, because of the pandemic, that this was an option before, now it has become a necessity. So so I think there is a lot of scope and a lot of work is being done to take advantage of technology, even within countries like Africa and a lot of sections of India.
Thank you, Sumit. We are running out of time. I'm going to take last two questions. Before that, let me ask Air Marshal Bhavnani. I think he wants to ask the question. Sir, go ahead. You can unmute your mic and ask the question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deepak and Sumit, for his most insightful presentations and very educative for all of us, I think. My question is to Deepak. And, in your presentation, you had mentioned while how AI is going ahead and having so many opportunities and building technology and raising the level of technology in all over the world. One of the areas you mentioned in your presentation was that in order to have greater business opportunities and profitability in your business, you need AI to help you to advertise. And AI can tell you whether it's going to be Google or through Facebook or wherever it is. And that would increase your business and profitability as such. So, my question is that, look at the flip side of it, that those who want to sell products which may not be of the kind and quality and standards which the world demands, they can use these areas, Google and perhaps Facebook, etc., to sell products which may not be of the quality and standards which are required by the world, due to the fact that they're bombarding the whole world with a product which may not satisfy FDA, etc. Requirements. Now, I'm asking you this question because the way media has taken over today the world, we are having, in the geopolitical environment, we are having some problems with a country called Nepal. I'm not sure if you're aware of how suddenly there's been a change in the attitude of Nepal, which is perhaps the only other Hindu country in the world, and we are like brothers, But today they are not behaving like that, and the reason is because the Chinese have bombarded them with misinformation, and that misinformation has been fed to the entire public in Nepal, to entire leadership in Nepal, and I'm sure you know what has been the outcome of that, what has been the result. So how do you deal with a situation like that, with AI coming in, with machine learning, with data being available? This is the flip side. How do you deal with this negative side?
Very interesting question actually looking at the products and services and how it can actually apply to India and Nepal is actually kind of a very interesting question for me. My take is actually going to be two in that case. The first is that the technology which we have built, which we call it market mix attribution model, multi-touch attribution model, actually helps people or the leaders to identify the right segment of the people to whom they want to target as well. So in this particular case of Nepal, the same models, when you have less money, how you can actually gain the maximum benefit or the maximum, we would say the mileage of every rupee or dollar spent is what these models will actually allow you to do. And there are various ways of finding it out: influencer marketing, or being actually to influence the influencer and getting that spread out. So one of the things, to summarize it, the first point is about using the AI technology to, if you have less money, how you can get the maximum advertising and maximum benefit of that rupees spent. You can do that. The second thing is going to be about the value from the perspective. Sometimes you talked about the products which are actually going to be cheaper, and there may not be actually the product which can be used by others. I basically see that as that product is still actually has a value, and that value is actually more, and the value is actually seen from the perspective of a customer, is that this is what I spend and this is what I get. So for example, a BD versus cigarette versus cigar. Means a BD who is actually cheap is still actually used by a lot of people, because what the money they spend and the flavor they actually get is still an overall is a higher value for that customer than actually the customers who are actually going to buy the cigarette. So if we will basically try to advertise the value and not on the price as such, we might be able to target the right customers, because the value which is actually to me or seen by me, a particular car or a particular product will be different for another customer. And if you will target the right customer who is actually the right segment for your product, is actually going to be helped by the AI and ML. So in your perspective, in that perspective, is that you can actually target your product and services to the right prospect instead of trying to spend millions and billions and then just advertising on ZTV and then hope somebody will actually watch it and then be able to get a benefit out of it.
Thank you, Deepak.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. I'm going to take two questions, one from J.K. Vedamanikam, and then I'll ask a request Mr. Umesh Joshi to ask the question as well. Let me read out J.K. Vedamanikam's question. With IR4, there are going to be different skill sets which will be essential for employment generation. For example, programs to work on, say, developing IBM Watson apps will have employment opportunities. Is our country getting geared for this? What steps do we need to take to make sure that we are not adversely affected in employment opportunities by IR4?
Yeah, I think I mean, it's an excellent question, right? And this is certainly a concern where one side you have technology opportunities to develop new things, right? The other side, as you optimize these processes, there is a potential of job losses as well, right? And we talked a little bit about these, I know, same things before as well, where it needs a balancing act, right? Where it's not a zero-sum game as well, right? Where there is potential that as we come up with new ideas and new products, right, there's going to be overall job gain, but at the same time there's work to be done to make that happen, right? So just like there's been a shift over a period of last many years where there's a shift from an agricultural society to an industrial society within India and worldwide as well, right? Likewise, there has to be a shift when we talk to a more I guess a more digital society, right? And that's where it's necessary to embrace what is coming new, not resist that, but also to prepare on how to deal with it better, how to tackle it, how to take advantage of it, right? So, and that's where the education and upskilling programs, they become extremely critical.
Thank you, Sumit. Deepak, do you want to say anything?
Yeah. I mean, I think what I have seen in India is that because there are a lot of more competition in terms of jobs, the opportunities, Indian people have been always looked for availing those opportunities, whether it is by upskilling and actually getting into the areas which were not explored before. So from that perspective, the amount of education systems which are out there, whether it is private or education, or the help which is actually provided by a different organization or the system, that is actually going to happen. And if you have that culture of learning, continuous learning within that, then the things will start to actually happen. Of course, Watson-like technologies are actually going to disrupt. Maybe Watson is actually not a good example in a sense that they could have actually done a better job in terms of adoption of their tool in the marketplace, even after being the number one in by beating the Jeopardy. By winning the Jeopardy 12 years ago, 14 years ago, disruptors. And if we have survived IR 2.0 textile industry is still solid in India right now. The customized clothes actually has fueled smart factories, innovators, and creative people doing that and selling their products at a better margin today than it was yesterday. In my opinion, we will be able to win this IR 4.0 war from the innovation and upskilling ourselves, which is actually going to happen, and they're better positioned than anybody else.
Thank you, Deepak.
If I may, sir, if I may add just a couple of minutes. So, as far as AI is concerned, as a part of the Skill India initiative, I think 2 to 3 months back, it was announced that across telecom industry, the minister had announced an initiative to do the upskill on that. Apart from that, there is also AI applications happening across the industry, but these are not so much in public domain. But yes, the upskilling even in India is happening. It's not something that's not moving, or it may not be sufficient to catch up with the world, but there is a sufficient amount of upskilling initiative which is currently on.
Yeah, thank you, Shuktij. Mr. Umesh Joshi, you can ask your question. You can unmute yourself. Be online?
Yeah.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is that seeing the industry 4.0 and AI and ML in place for medium and small scale industries in India, they don't have enough money to buy these costly sensors and PLC interfaces and other interfaces required for machines. So how this can be made more affordable to masses so that it will be the people, the manufacturers in India can use this technology and it will be available to all.
I think Deepak should answer it. He's already doing this.
Go ahead.
In my opinion, actually, if you think about 10 years ago, we were actually having the same question, is that I'm a small organization and I cannot have a data center of 5 million by spending $5 million. Now the cloud technologies has basically enabled that I can actually use the systems of the same capacity on a pay-per-use model. So in my opinion, it's the same thing going to be. It is, as we are innovating more and more, the pricing model will actually change. Right now, I can actually have, a common person can actually have Ferrari for 2 hours. I mean, why to actually have Ferrari, which is actually going to sit around for 730 hours in a month? I can, if I'm using it 20 hours for 20 hours, I can actually have it. This is whole Uberization effect of that, is that when I'm paying for an asset as I use it, and if those are actually applied to these costly sensors and things of that nature and machineries, Caterpillar is actually nowadays provide their vehicles on a pay-per-use basis as well. You don't have to spend millions of dollars to have that equipment sitting in actually the yard, which you are going to use it for a few hours only. So in short, there are going to be a lot of innovation in the finance companies, and the investments companies are actually going to come together and make this technology available to the small and medium size, because that's the only way this revolution is going to be successful. And that is one of the challenge for every policymaker, a country, that what are the constructs they are actually going to put in place which is going to make that happen. And some of the countries or organization or non-profit organization able to advise and drive that will be actually the deciding factor for who is actually going to win in IR 4.0 in a longer run.
Thank you.
If I may add to this, I think this question was very brilliant because the way I look at IR 4.0, I look at it more as an equalizer between small scale industries and large scale industries. In my view, the IR 4.0 will not be a social equalizer, it will be an industrial equalizer. A lot of small scale or MSME companies which were not able to afford, large scale technology and platforms because of the, democratization of technology or democratization of AI. Will be able to utilize and will be able to, fight in terms of the quality and the cost aspect of it. So I look at, my view, Umesh, on the impact of IR 4.0 is more within the industry. It's an equalizer. It will equalize the industries, and my view, the benefit goes more to the smaller industries than to the large or integrated industries.
Shuktij, if I may add one more point to your point as well, is that as an entrepreneur and as the owner of small and medium-sized companies, they're also looking at the valuation of their company itself. If you're not using IR 4.0, the profit margin which you have today, suppose if it is 8% or 10%, which is cost of capital for you, the moment you actually deploy the IR 4.0, the valuation of your company is actually going to be higher because the profit margins are actually going to be better, because that's the purpose of it. That's why you're actually using this new technologies. And if you can prove that you are actually going to have that 3%, 5%, 10% increment into your profit, which is the bottom line, and from the profit perspective, then there will be a lot of investors who will be actually be able to put the money into your company, and your overall valuation will be in multiples, in a different multiple than the similar company which is actually not using IR 4.0. So from a long-term perspective, for an organization which is small and medium-sized, they actually have to really think twice that the benefits from a valuation perspective, from the profit perspective, from the value perspective to the customer is actually going to be way much more if they will actually stay behind in this curve.
Absolutely, yeah. Sumit, you want to add anything into that?
I would say that this is opportunity to innovate. So I was listening to a talk by an Australian energy company, where now this is a bigger company, right? So they didn't have, but they still have, they didn't have challenge in terms of innovation resources, but they still had financial challenges. So as they were trying to build these kind of solutions, especially look at digital twins, they innovated their own sensors. Where they were, instead of buying something from the market, they kind of worked with their partner ecosystem, and they built their own sensors to manage the costs themselves. And at the end of the day, right, the slide I had about business outcomes, right, it has to focus on business outcomes, and it has to make financial sense for the companies who are looking to use it. So I think that's how you have to look at using technology to see if it provides you an advantage or not.
Thank you, Sumit. Okay, there are still plenty of questions, and that shows the kind of interest that this discussion today has generated immensely. I'm going to bring the discussion to an end because we've already gone past 2.5 hours. And let me pose one question to all the panelists, and you could answer along with your closing comments for today's session. That is, Deepak, you brought about the issue of healthcare and how innovative practices address the Mexican case study that you indicated. The pandemic has exposed all national governments and all countries in the context of addressing healthcare in a serious, that they have a very seriously defective system and inefficient system, majority of the countries of the world. And in that context, technologies like AI and, for example, blockchain, particularly developing countries are afflicted by corruption, inefficiency, and deliberate policy flaws. So can application of these technologies remove corruption, bring in better transparency, more efficiency, and better accountability? Your answers to this and your closing comments on this today's session.
So I would basically say that the blockchain has been really the cornerstone technology in exactly meeting that need. In a sense that I might not actually be able to trust what others are saying because the ledger which they have is actually stays with them. However, the blockchain technology, when I basically timestamped, I basically have said this is actually told by, say, Dr. Shuktij, but at this time, and this is what actually were his exact sentence, and I can prove it, which is irrefutable. And those are the technologies which cannot be tempered. That is actually going to bring transparency in the government processes and also government claims to many things which they are actually making. And if the more important part will be that how soon or what kind of pushback within their organization they are going to have to open up to that culture, because that's where is going to be the biggest challenge for the leaders. Technology is there to help. However, whether that wrench is going to be in the hand of an architect or whether that wrench is going to be in the hand of a monkey, and how and who is actually going to tell that put this ladder on against which wall. Technology will help in climbing the people, but that ladder has to be pointing to the right building. And that is what actually the leaders have to think today, and that's where the leader has to guide their organization or their country. That would be my say in that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deepak. Sumit, yeah.
Well, it's hard to beat that one, Deepak. Great points. So there, when we talk about technology like AI, there are challenges, right? And we should recognize those. Where there are different steps in the process. Where AI could come out with a recommendation, but it's up to the person who is using it to actually use those recommendations, right? And trust those recommendations as well, right? So there is that aspect of having a human in the loop to review and gain that trust, right? And as well as adapt and not to be scared by what AI is bringing. But so, and the other side of it is also where AI is bringing challenges like fairness and bias, and it's considered a black box, and many people look at it as a magic bullet as well. And so there are aspects of using AI in a responsible fashion. So there is a whole set of regulations and discussion across various forums happening on what does responsible AI mean and how to apply in the day-to-day solutions. And that said, right, the goal of technology is to create better output, better services, better solutions, right, and support what makes sense and what creates a differentiating benefit for everybody who's using it, right? So the eventual goal has to be, and I think that was one of the points, one of the technology spaces that World Economic Forum had identified was for the planet, right? So the ultimate goal has to be that it is something that is benefiting the society around that product. And I think there were several questions aimed at us as well around, how does it impact jobs? How does it impact lives? So I think with that message, I will close that, think of it as, how does it benefit you and the society as a whole?
Thank you, Sumit. Shuktij, your points?
Yes, sir. So my view is that there are two parts to the story of IR 4.0. The one part is the disruptive technologies and the way they are changing the the economic structures and the industrial structures. The other side of this is related to the the poor countries or the underdeveloped countries and the gap between the developed nations and the underdeveloped nations. My view is that while these technologies have a potential of bringing in transparency into financial transactions, for example, blockchain, as well as AI has the potential of taking the accurate inputs rather than estimated inputs. And data sciences and data analytics have the potential of bringing a situation where you work on real data and create real solutions to real problems. Since the world started moving into this space and the data sciences started becoming more prominent in last 1 decade, especially in medical sciences, people are absolutely shaken. A lot of medicines, a lot of treatments, a lot of solutions were developed on the basis of sampling a small part of population. And then the same medicine was made standardized for the entire population. And in last few years, the world has seen how off the target our treatments have been, especially with healthcare. Now, while the benefits that we get out of AI and data sciences are good for companies that have already existing industries, what happens to countries which are struggling for their basic amenities? What happens to, say, for example, Africa? While these will help them to become less poor, but I still feel that, we will not see an immediate equalization, because as much as I trust technology, I also trust the ability of our politicians around the world to circumvent the transparency mechanisms and to hold the power equation, because eventually what I tried to show in a very subtle way in my last slide was that as these technologies will evolve, as the permeation will become bigger, people that be in positions of power will start having to answer questions, real questions, and they will have to start providing real solutions. So with that, I close my views.
Thank you, Shuktij. So we come to the end of the session. Like all good things, they have to come to an end. It's been a fabulous session and extremely interesting. It's a huge topic. We can carry on for hours, probably a series of discussions on this. And the interest has been generated tremendously, and that's shown by the questions that have come. It remains for me to thank, Deepak, Mr. Deepak Mittal, Mr. Sumit Agarwal, and Shuktij Singh on behalf of the Peninsula Foundation for extremely wonderful, presentations and discussions and interactions. We do hope to engage with you in the future as well. But thank you so much for this wonderful, exposition, and all the best to you all. And thank you once again very much from the Peninsula Foundation side. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, Sumit, and thank you, Shuktij.
Thank you, sir, and thank you the audience for excellent questions and being patient to this all.
Thank you.
So,
thank you so Marshal Bhavnani for giving his time. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, Matheswaran sir, for giving this opportunity for this discussion. I think it was wonderful session.
Thank you, everybody. And I'm available anytime via my email or any discussion anybody would like to have.
Thank you, Deepak.
Love that.
Great knowing you all. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maxi. Thank you, Shuktij. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.